Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. You're going to love today's episode. But before I get there, let me tell you about a few things I have going on. Number one, I've got my best-selling book, Finding Your Summit. Obviously, it's got the same name as the pod that is out on Amazon. It's also on Audible if you want to go find out about not just about the peaks, but I've been through a heck of a lot of valleys and how I climbed out. Go check out that book today. I've also been on the speaking circuit quite a bit, www.markpattisonnfl.com. And that's where you can find me. I've got a lot of great stuff going on. All right, I need to get into today's guest. He's sensational. He's amazing. I've been on actually his new podcast called the Reinvention Project. His name, the one and only Jim Rome. Jim, how you doing?
Mark, my guy, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I can't believe I actually captured. I feel like I've been on like a big hunt in Africa, and I've finally captured the big beast that's out in the forest, and I appreciate you
Absolutely
coming on.
wrong, man. What you found was like a rabbit. You found some squirrel, like I'm roadkill. You're just driving around, minding your own business, and you ran over a squirrel. That's what I am, man. I don't know what you're talking about, but
All
but but
right.
go ahead and tell yourself that it's fine.
All right, no, that's all good. So look, you've been in radio for a long time, and you've transitioned over in the podcasting world. You've been on television. You've done a lot of different mediums, and so to be on this podcast, I really appreciate you. You've got a lot of experience. You've been doing this for a long time. I used to listen to you, and I need to give a little backdrop here to go where I want to go, which is kind of where we are today. But I remember back in the days when you're at XTRA 690 down in San Diego. I think you came on right before or right after Hacksaw Hamilton, and he was doing his thing. But it seemed like that's really the place where you first broke in and you created this niche in the market. You were always the ultimate hustler, and you weren't afraid to face guys.
No, you gotta, I mean, it goes back even further than that. Like I went to UC Santa Barbara and I got there and I won't belabor this point, but I checked into the dorms and then I went right to the radio station and effectively never left. I mean, look, I went to class sometimes, I partied sometimes, but I always had it in my head. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But that whole San Diego thing, it seemed like I kind of came out of nowhere. But the truth of the matter is, and I think you'll understand this, I was in Santa Barbara, which was market 174.
Yeah.
It took me the better part of 3 years to get out of that market to get to San Diego. And I'm telling you, I was banging on every single door, writing every single letter, sending every single resume. Every time I did something I thought was noteworthy on the radio, I would clip it and I would send it to somebody. And you don't know if you're getting out. Like I was the minor leagues and I was grinding and battling and fighting until I finally got to 690. By the time I got there, I had visualized it so many different ways and thought about what I would do if I ever got that opportunity so many different times that when I finally got that opportunity, I was ready for that opportunity. And then to your point, I did a show that people were not doing at that time. But because I had started to plot and plan years before then. So, yes, I got my big break in San Diego, and luckily it worked. But there was a lot that went into it, a lot.
Yeah. So here's a little story I'm going to insert that you don't know about my background. So you created this show is called The Jungle, or there was the Jungle theme, and so you played the Guns N' Roses "Welcome to the Jungle," right? It's like kind of the intro and the exit, and and so what you don't know is I went to grade school and high school, played on the same football team with Duff McKagan, the bassist of Guns N' Roses. So
Oh, yeah.
every single time that tune came on, and we would later come, he's got a place in Seattle, and we grew up in the same neighborhood. And when I was living up there, and he still has his house on the water up there, and we get together, and so every single time that song came on, I was listening to you, and you guys were talking smack, and you had your own lingo and all that kind of stuff happening. And he had the intro and the exit with "Welcome to the Jungle." There he was. I was thinking about Duff McKagan, and like what a great song. It's become really an anthem for so many different stadiums and radio shows and things like that.
Hey, Mark, I don't know if you know this. There's more to that story. Okay, one, I did not know that story, so I'm glad I do know that story.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the other part of that story. So Duff, as you know, went through a really, really tough time.
Yeah.
And Duff, I haven't talked to Duff in a few years. We talked about this a couple of times, but Duff, when he had a book that dropped, he came on the program and we just talked about things. He said, Jim, I don't know if you know this, but you actually, I'm gonna be careful how I say this. I don't want to say that he said, I helped save him, But when he went through his darkest time,
Yeah.
and I know you talk about the ups and downs and trials and tribulations, when he went through a really dark period, he would listen to the jungle. He would listen to the show, and it gave him something to kind of laugh at, and it gave him some consistency, and it gave him some continuity. And he said this particular sports talk show, of all things, helped him get through some of the darkest periods of his life. So
Yeah.
that Duff McKagan connection between you and I and him, it goes even deeper than you think. He told me that. I was blown away. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. But he
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah, well, I do know all about those times, and that was dark for him, and he was going through a lot of, he had had a lot of alcohol abuse and drugs and everything else, just like the entire band. And he's very open about this, as you know, and it's really what saved him and put him on a path towards recovery. And then, like he is now, is just a crazy physical fitness Freddie that goes out and he lives such a healthy life now, and he's been married to the same gal for a long time. And our kids used to play together actually over at his house, and really cool. And so it's great to see people who've gone through the ups and then the downs and fight their way out and then end up in a really positive space. And he's a smart dude too.
It's the best thing ever because and this is one of the key things. You and I know this, and it's all about ownership, right? It's all about ownership. I feel really strongly about this. Complete ownership, or as Jocko Willink would talk about, extreme ownership. No one's coming to save us. Nobody is coming to save us. And the fact of the matter is, I'm no different than most people. I've played that victim card at certain points in my life. It's so easy. As an athlete, you understand this. There are a million athletes in the world that are like, I would have been a pro. I would have been a pro, but that coach hated me. Or I would have made it in my business, or I would have got that promotion, but that boss had it in for me, or my parents didn't raise me the right way. It's so easy to blame everybody and everything. But instead, if you own it and you realize that you're actually the reason you are where you are, we're all products of our choices, our habits, our actions. And if you stop blaming everybody, and it's nobody's saying this is easy, but like to your point, Duff or others that have worked their way out of this hole, man, if you own this and realize, all right, I put myself in this position, I therefore can get myself out of this position, but nobody's coming to save me. Nobody is coming to save me. Once you have that, you sit in it and you have that hard conversation with yourself, man, that's empowering. And then you come out the other end, because we also know this, right? There's only one way out, and it's straight through. It's
Yeah.
straight through. But you got to do the work. You have to.
You have to do the work, and that's I think a big missing piece on so many athletes, because they're always comparing themselves to everybody else. And having been very fortunate to go up through major college football and then on to the NFL, you got to quit. The only person that matters is yourself. What can you do today to affect tomorrow? And that's the whole magic to the whole thing. Like you said, you got to go through it. You can't go around it.
Hey man, the comparison game's the worst for anybody. It's not just athletes, right? It's UVU. It's UVU. It's you have to compare yourself to you or compete with yourself, like social media, right? I don't want to crack on social media, because social media, where would we be without it? And it's a
Yeah.
necessary reality. But what is it, man? It's a highlight reel. It's like all this stuff that we see on social
Yeah.
media. Number one, a lot of it's not true. In fact, anytime I see something, Mark, now that I think is awesome, I assume it's not true. If it seems too good to be true, then it's not true. But what does the comparison game do? Number one, you're comparing yourself to something that's not real, and you're comparing yourself to something that's going to make you feel like crap. Worry about you. I think that comparison game is one of the worst things of all. Worry about yourself. It's you v you. We're trying to get better every single day. And if we worry about ourselves, the rest should take care of itself. But don't worry about things that don't matter. As an athlete, you understand this, right? You only control the controllables. And I can't say how many NFL teams I've heard this from, but APE, right? The acronym APE. It's just all about attitude, preparation, and effort. We're so caught up in worrying about things that we can't control that we get dragged down by it. And no one's worried about the things they can control. If you dominate the things that you can control, you have a much greater chance for success.
Yeah, and really, Jim, that's really about leadership. My good friend, my best friend, Jim Mora, and one of the things we talk about, hard things are hard, and take accountability, and all these different things that you got to start with yourself before you can lead others. And too many people, whether they're blaming or whatever, you can't be that guy on the field unless you really put your right foot forward and you dig yourself out and you say and you make the commitment to yourself what kind of person you want to be, which brings me to my next point. And I don't want to belabor this. I want to bring it up. And it's really a compliment, a backhanded compliment to you, in terms of where you are today, what I've seen when I was on your podcast, I listen to your stuff all the time, and the kind of questions that you now ask. I think I want to start off first that you talked about when you were up in Santa Barbara and you were grinding for 3 years. You're still early in the game, right? And now you have an opportunity to go down to 690 in San Diego, and all of a sudden you become this big ass deal, right? And what would follow is some television exposure and working with some big name people and having all these amazing guests on. And it seems like you really blew up in a big way. How did you keep your ego intact? And maybe you didn't. And kind of behind that is because that's not what I see today. I see just a very seasoned guy that has life really in perspective. And I don't want to, we don't need to go into the incident, but the whole Jim Everett thing. And kind of from that guy to where you are today. And then, when fame hits, all of a sudden, for different people can do different things. I've heard on your own podcast where you've been talking about, I used to live on this big hill down in Irvine or wherever you were. And then, you realize that you had your own kind of come to Jesus. So I'm really trying to get at, like, what was that arc and what was that bridge that kind of got you from here to there?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not, if you want to talk about the incident, I'm more than happy to talk about the incident. I've always talked about the incident because that's part of ownership.
Yeah.
But the thing about me getting to where I got, like, Mark, I always understood it. Like, here's the thing. It's easier to understand now, but not so much then. People would just determine, like, they'd hear me on the radio and either they love me or
Yeah.
they wanted to fight me. There was nothing, it was very binary, right? They either hated me or they loved me. But what people didn't understand was it was a show. It was a show. So I was being real. I was being authentic. I don't think it would have worked otherwise. It
Yeah.
worked because it was different. But I mean, that's who I was. I said what I meant and I meant what I said, but it was a show. I always understood that. You have to give them a show. Part of the reason I had success was when I was growing up, I would listen and consume this content, but there weren't very many radio programs. Like when I got that job at 690 AM, there was only one sports talk radio show in America, or station, WFN in New York, and San Diego was only half. So there wasn't even really a format or a genre. But what I used to hear growing up in LA was like Dodger talk. And it would be some guy with a big voice, and somebody would call up and say, "Hey, host, great show. What do you think the Dodgers' chances are next weekend against the Cubs? And how does the pitching match up? And I'll take your answer off the air." And then big voice guy would give some answer. I'm like, man, that is pretty boring. There's not a whole lot of show in that.
Yeah.
I want to give them a show. So to your point about, like, how did you deal with that? Was your ego out of control? No, because I wasn't necessarily what I seemed, right? I was doing a show, but it was a personality, but the show was real, but I always understood it. Like, here's my thing. I was like a common person with uncommon goals. But the one thing I had going for me was I always got it. I understood who and what I was. I understood that I can't believe this. They're paying me to talk smack. They're paying me to do interviews. They're paying me to watch games. They're paying me. I can't believe this. I always got it. It never got away from me. And I always understood the inherent responsibility with being on the air, and what I said mattered and it impacted people, athletes and otherwise. So to believe it or not, people don't get this. My ego never got the better of me. Now I made mistakes. I still make mistakes, but I was always greatly appreciative of the opportunity. And like, for instance, when I met my wife in San Diego, she was way more successful. She made way more money than me. And she actually was a corporate executive for the station and tried to fire me when she heard me on the air. And we started with nothing. So
Yeah.
Janet and I always knew, because she and I got together when I had nothing. I always knew that if it all went away, she would still be there. So
Yeah.
the long answer is, yes, I had this amazing arc and I got to this mountain, like you talk about mountains. But the reason I think I'm still here, I always got it. Man, I work. I do the
Well,
same things
I
and
think you had
have
a,
been for
yeah,
decades.
yeah. Well, I think, okay, so that's I get that. And that was your stick. And you had a certain lingo and a certain vibe, and you had a certain audience that was coming to you in those days. I guess what I'm seeing today, and we're about the same age, right? And if you're not growing, if you're not going forward, you're going backwards, right? And what I see, especially when I listen to these podcasts that you do and you inspire me, is way more of a depth in terms of the questions that you're asking and that you're really sinking into people and really understanding where they're at. And I don't know, your interviews to me are just so much more filling and gratifying to listen to today than they were years ago when it was just more surface. What are you doing? How it was just that, and that's all part of maturity too, right? That's all, that's part of the growth.
I think you're right. I think, look, you evolve or you die. We're going forward or we're going backwards. Nobody stays the same. And I've reinvented myself and I continue to reinvent myself. I think the interviews that you listen to, maybe, to be fair, I think my sports interviews are still good. I take a lot of pride in them, but then the long form ones are better. As an example, I've got a long form podcast that's not the one that you were on, but a sports podcast where I can go deeper. I had a
Yeah.
conversation with Ricky Williams
Yeah.
this week that I'm
I
very
listened to him
happy
this
with.
morning. Yeah. It was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly. The ones that you're talking about, maybe that you hear on my daily show, you're right. They're more surface because they're topical. They're 7 or 8 minutes and it's just a daily thing. It turns over and over. The conversation you and I are having right now is a very different conversation than I have in my day job. Like, I really like this space. I'm inspired by you too. And I'm inspired by the people I talk to and I want to learn. And it's just a different animal. We're playing a different sport right here, I think.
Yeah.
Right? This is a different part of the brand and a different expansion and a different part of the brain. And don't get me wrong, that whole sports thing has led me places that I would have never ever expected and given me the life that I never ever really necessarily expected. But you're right. This is a different kind of conversation. And I used to always say, when I was on my way up and I was talking so much shit and doing my thing as aggressively as I was, I realized even in my 30s, the last thing the world needs is a 50-year-old smack talker. So what they're getting is a 61-year-old smack talker who's dialed it back a little bit. However, you're right, man. This stuff's deeper. This is the stuff that truly, truly matters. You're
I
right.
love it. I love it. I mean, it's fulfilling for me. So let me ask you this. You've interviewed all these different guys, and what I'm looking for here is like of this group I'm going to throw out at you, has there been one interview or one person you've gotten to know that's had an impact on you? These are all great, phenomenal athletes: Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Tiger Woods, Nick Saban, Belichick, Barkley, these different guys. Like in that group, is there somebody in there that has had a profound effect on you and where you've gotten to today?
It's really funny to say that. So of that group, this is really interesting, and you might find this surprising. Of that group, a big chunk of that group I have not spoken to because they're just guys that don't do one-on-ones,
Mhm.
and or because of who I was, they're like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. As an example, Tiger Woods is not a guy that I've ever sat down with and done a one-on-one with, but I was deeply, deeply once. Nick Saban, I interviewed state, but not since. Belichick just doesn't do those one-on-ones. The Charles Barkley thing, this is not as deep or as profound, but anecdotally, I think you would like this, and I think that your viewers might like this. So, Charles, when I back in the day, I did a show for Fox Sports Net, and it was one of those first debate shows. Believe it or not, we were ahead of our time. I did it with early in my career, and he was also covering just debate back and forth every day. So he was still in his thing covering sports in New York, and Charles was in his prime. And Wally goes to a Knicks game, and Charles is there, and Charles looks at Wallace and goes, "Oh," and Charles hated the media, which is ironic because he's like the best ever at the media.
Yeah.
He hated the media always, and he's like, "Oh, there you are. Where's your partner, the village idiot?" Well, me being who I was back then, I'm like, "Yo, man, that's like crack for me. Every day I'm on the air, just killing this guy, killing this guy, killing this guy." And he's showing up in other markets. Like, Rome is like the worst thing about sports. Rome is one of the worst things ever to happen in sports. So one day I'm with this guy, Don McClain. Remember Don McClain, the former
Yeah.
NBA player
Yeah.
and UCLA
UCLA.
great? We were
UCLA.
very good friends. And yeah, exactly. We were very good friends. And he and my wife and he and his wife are going to go to Vegas, the four of us. He goes, "I'll tell you who we're going to run into." And I go, "Who?" He goes, "Chuckles." I'm like, "Bro, I got to be honest with you. If we see Charles Barkley in Vegas, it's going to go really badly. Like, he and I are really bad blood, really, really bad blood." And he goes, "Well, I'm telling you, we're going to see him. He's there all the time." It was the craziest thing. Mark. We go right from the hotel to this restaurant, Piero's, famous Italian restaurant. And I'm not even kidding you. We're like maybe a cocktail in, and I feel this energy like coming through the door. And it's Charles Barkley, and he's got a blonde on both the arms, and he's like MVP Charles at this point, super menacing and intimidating. And he sees Don. He loves Don. He's like, D-Mac, my man, what's going on? And he swings over and he looks at me and he gets this look on his face, like that bitter beer face, like, you know, like he visibly, he's not happy to see me at all. And I, for some reason, maybe I got a martini in me. I feel like it's a good idea to jump up immediately and go, hey man, let me tell you where you and I went wrong. And my wife's like mortified. And he looks at me, and I don't know where you are on profanity. He's like, hey, MFer, I'll tell you where we went wrong. And it's tense for a couple of minutes. And I'm like, I'm gonna get knocked the hell out. Not a table flip, but I mean knocked the hell out by Charles Barkley. And then the weirdest thing, there's like a switch. He looks at me and goes, you know what, man? He's like, screw it. You're good with D-Mac. You're good with me. Crystal all around. And like, just like that, it was over. It literally was over. And a week later, he is appearing on the program and we're talking about it. And we've been like this ever since. One of my favorite human beings ever. One of the best guys ever, Charles Barkley. And he would have knocked me the hell out. And I'd never seen anything like it. He is just such a good dude. So did that have a profound influence on me? Yeah, in some ways it did. Certainly being socially, but it's one of my favorite stories and one of the great experiences of my life. And I love the man dearly,
I love that.
dearly.
I love that. So, I mean, for you to be doing this 30 years, right? And at the top of your game, I know there's probably been dips like this is like getting inside your world with your wife and you're talking about like, how am I gonna, whether it's TV or podcasting or radio or whatever, just the market has changed, you've evolved. So the resilience, the mindset, those types of things that you need to have. Tell me more about this new podcast that you have out called The Reinvention and why you want to do it.
All right. So, you know, that's actually the podcast is not really new. I started doing it around, I think maybe in 2020. In 2020. And the thing is, I'll tell you what, I've always been fascinated by high achievers, peak performance. Even in high school, way back in the day, I would read books. I would read books on success. I read like Napoleon Hill when I was a teenager. Like I was always, sports was always my thing, but I was always like in a mindset. Like, here, this is really interesting. I think you might find interesting. So when I was trying to develop my craft and thinking about the show and trying to get that break from San Diego, I was actually running two parallel paths. I was working on my mind. I was working on my mindset. I was working on my mental toughness. I kind of understood what I was up against and where was my separation. So I was always really fascinated by high achievement and peak performers. So that was always in the back of my mind. And in sports, right? You see us all the time. I always had kind of an interview that they slanted that way towards what makes that guy tick or that gal tick, or why are they so good? How did they get to be the upper 1%? It always fascinated me. And then one day I came together with Ed Milet. And Ed Milet is a monster in the space. And Ed lived not that far from me at that time. He was still in California. And I went on his podcast. And then we ended the podcast and he looks at me and he goes, you know what, Jim, you actually are really good at this. Have you ever thought about doing this? Have you ever thought about being in this space? And I said, actually, Ed, a lot. I've thought about this a lot. And, my career's changed and the market's changed and I don't know where I'm going to end up. He's like, you really should think about this. And it was at that point that I started my podcast because I wanted to think about how am I going to reinvent myself? Because I won't do this forever and I'm going to keep doing this. But that's how that podcast started. I wanted to talk to people like you. I wanted to talk to people like Ed Milet. I wanted to talk to people that I thought had overcome unbelievable things. Like I'd always been fascinated by Navy SEALs and BUDS training and Hell Week. So I wanted a platform so I could start to talk to different sorts of people about different sorts of things to better myself and then maybe help others with what I had learned. So that was the genesis of that podcast.
It's incredible. And, there's so much to learn. Again, the theme of this show is people overcoming adversity and finding their way. So I've been doing this. I'm on you are episode 307. So I've had a number of these types of conversations. And the reality is that everybody's gone through some shit in their life. And if they haven't gone, and fallen into that hole, it's happening. It will happen. You can't go through life and it's just a straight up line, as you know. And so, um, being filled full of these stories where people are burned on 90% of their body from a fiery crash that they got into, or being paralyzed and running some Ironman in Hawaii or something like that, is so inspiring to me. And so, from me to you right now, for somebody who has been able to survive, and not only survive but thrive in a marketplace where there's been this emerging. I mean, back in the eight, we're roughly the same age, and back in the mid '80s and '90s, the internet wasn't around, and so social media wasn't around, and so cell phones weren't around, right? And so there's been this evolution on the way that we create content and what you're actually spewing that's out there that's positive in a way that can help others. And and to me, then, that between those words called resilience and mindset and grit and determination and things like that, that's where you pull from. And the biggest lesson that I've found, and you probably find the same thing, is success leaves clues. And that's something that one of the reasons why I listen to you, because I want to learn from you on how I can get better on doing what I do. And I know the reason why you're still at it is because you have that drive, and there's always another person, there's always another story to tell you something that's probably going to really rock your world and make you think, like, how can I improve my life in that way?
No, exactly right. And that's why I love this space, because we can have conversations like this, long form conversations like this. Whereas you're right. When I'm interviewing coaches and I'm interviewing players, they're reluctant to really let you in or tell you anything or anything you haven't already heard. But every time I have a conversation like this, you and I, for me to have a conversation with somebody who has scaled all these mountains and Mount Everest, I can't do that on my daily show and give it justice. Even when you and I spoke, we couldn't get to that stuff because we were all about the mindset, right? So we're uncovering ground and we're going places where we haven't gone. And you know how it is. You mentioned Jim Mora. I love Jim Mora, one of my favorite guys. For him to be your best friend, this is not an original thought, but we are a product of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So the more time that I can spend with people like you and him and on this podcast, I come away from it every single time wanting to be better, because you want to surround yourself with people that tell you not what you want to hear, but who make you better, right? So that's why I love this space. And what have I overcome? All right. So longevity, consistency, I have stamina, I've changed with the marketplace. But to your point, there are people who have lost limbs. There are people who have 90% of their body burned. There are people who have faced life and death situations. I haven't done that, but I sure want to hear about it. And I sure want to hear how they came out the other end, because you're right. That's going to leave us clues.
My last story to that point is Freddie Couples had me on his Cyrus FM show.
Love him.
Yeah,
Love him, man.
yeah, he's such a beauty of a guy, right? And actually, he's from my hometown in Seattle. And so he had me, and he was on there with another guy, and they were just trying to get their arms around why anybody in their like wild mind would even want to go climb Mount Everest and live at 2 months at 17,500 feet and have shit food and be in the death zone and have oxygen mask on. He felt like, he was talking to an astronaut or something. But for him, I mean, that's my world, just like golf is his world. And I was just trying to, so fascinated, like, how do you, like, navigate around Augusta, right? Or some of these other places that the guy is actually played and won. And so he's trying to understand my world, and I'm trying to understand his world. And I think that's one of the things that you do well, is really try to understand other people's world and where they're coming from to
I'm
then,
trying to understand both of you. I'm trying to
right?
understand both of you. You're right. I'm curious about that. Like Freddie's different, man. Freddie was a rock star. Freddie probably still is a rock star. Freddie was that guy that I don't want to be crass. Freddie was the guy that all the guys wanted to hang out with and all the gals wanted to be with, and Freddie was just that. He had so much it. And part of it was the swing, part of it was the cool. But you're right. Both you guys, I can't do anywhere near what either of you guys can do, but I want to know more. I want to know more. I'm curious about that, but there's an acknowledgement in that. I think you're right. He can't do what you can do, and you can't do what he can do, and I can't do what either one of you can do. But I need to talk to both of you. How about
But
that?
the common thing with so many of these different people like you is that I have a drive and a need and a want to be around high achievers, and you are a high achiever. Jim Moore is a high achiever. Freddie Couples is a high achiever. Even Ted Nugent is like you. There's all these different people. Duff McKagan, right? And there's like what is that thing that got them and keeps them going? And
Well,
this, Go
Oh,
ahead.
I want to ask you something. I'm sorry. I don't
Yeah.
really, I don't interrupt people, but I really want to
Yeah.
ask you this because I know I'm looking at this clock. So then that comes back to one of my favorite questions. And Ed Milet and I talked about this on his podcast. I think about this all the time. You're talking about all these high achievers. What's the common thread? Nature or nurture? Nature or nurture? Where do you come out on that? Nature or nurture?
I'm not sure what the answer to that is because
Right.
I love the process. I love getting up. I love the challenge, and that just drives me. And I like one of the things you said in the very beginning of this podcast is like before we went live is that there is no stopping, right? I mean, there is no like when I get to 65 or whatever, I'm going on Social Security. I'm not. I mean, right now I feel like, I am accelerating. I'm pushing the pedal down. I want nothing to do with retirement. And why? Because there's so many things I've not accomplished and I still want to do. And I've got a number of things I have going on right now. But at the end of the day, whether it's nature or nurture, I'm not sure what that is. I just know that I have an internal drive. And I get a lot of people saying, why don't you just stop and go relax and go play golf? Because I don't want to,
Why don't you? Why
right?
don't you?
Yeah,
Why don't you go ahead and do that and stop putting that on us? Stop projecting on us because we're happy. We're happy doing what we're doing. I want to ask you something, and I want and shoot me completely straight and be
yeah,
real about this because you're a former athlete and you know that athletes can't do what they used to be able to do.
yeah,
As you and I are in our 60s, early 60s,
yeah,
do you fully believe that your next 20 years can be your most effective years? Do you
absolutely.
believe that your best is in front of you and not behind you?
No, no, no. My worst was behind me. I think my best is in front of me. I really believe that. And I've been able to accomplish so many things just from 50 to 60 that I can't wait. And I've got so much more of a baseline of skill sets and opportunities and people like you that I get to know that I just feel like, my springboard is now just happening, right? Which I'm really excited about. I don't know what that's going to be. It's going to be blue sky out there somewhere, but I can't wait for that blue sky.
I think it's such an important message for everybody listening and watching, and especially if you're early, if you're younger, and you can get this early on. But I think for those of us that are at this season of our life, that hey man, you don't need to lay down. You don't need to find a beach. Like there is greatness once you get into your 60s. I'm seeing coaches and others that are achieving amazing things well into their 70s. Well into their 70s. So why can't we? I think that's the most empowering, inspirational message of all. And I believe you when you say that the best is actually in front of you and not behind you. And I needed to hear it. I wanted to hear it, but I think that's a super important message for everybody,
So let me ask you
myself
this.
included.
We've got 2 minutes left. Jim Moore would be in that category too. We got 2 minutes. And the question is for you is when are you going to reset the Reinvention Project podcast that you have on?
I again, no excuses. I started to write my book, and since you wrote a book, you know how hard that is.
Yeah.
That's taking my time. I do a 3 hour show every single day. I would love to tell you that I'm going to send my next episode out, which is you. You're the
Yeah.
one I'm sitting on. Like I want to be in a regular rotation. I just need to get to it. So the answer is I can't give you an exact day, but hopefully sooner than later. I'm just fighting that good fight, and it's kicking my ass sometimes. But notice I want to make sure that I did this one before I released yours.
Good answer. Good answer. All right. Listen, buddy, wraps it up. Thank you so much for coming on. It's just a huge get for me. And as always, we just wrap it up, we chop it up. You're an easy guy to talk to, and you really get it. And I really appreciate that.
I mean, I got nothing but love and respect for you. I appreciate you. Hopefully, I didn't gab too much. But you know what? Since I don't do too much of this on the other side, I had a lot that I wanted to share, and I know that you have a good ear for that kind of thing. So hopefully, I didn't overly yap, but it was a great time and a great experience, and I appreciate you having me on. I really do.
There he is. Okay, everybody, the one, the only Jim Rome. Thank you so much.